What is up, Packers fans? Welcome in to an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thank you so much for being here. We are so freaking close to Packers training camp, but we're not quite there yet. But it is going to be absolutely epic. And of course, I'm going to have you covered as well as the rest of the Pack a Day podcast team as well. So make sure you're liking, subscribing, getting those notifications. And if you would like to along the way as well, give that 5-star review. We'd appreciate that a ton. And also check out those Pack a Day podcast YouTube memberships. Today is part 3 of our 3-part series as we look at this Green Bay Packers team and sort of expectations, goals, and what could happen or what would need to happen for those specific outcomes to come to fruition. 2 days ago, we looked at what would need to happen for the Packers to win a Super Bowl this year. That's a fun thing to think about and fun to look over what could happen or how they could potentially get to that point of winning a championship. Yesterday, not as fun, but I still think hopefully informative of what could potentially go wrong or what would likely go wrong in the event that the Packers took a step backwards and didn't even make the playoffs this year. Not as fun, not something that we're hoping comes to fruition, but like I said, hopefully educational and conversational nonetheless. Last but not least, today we're going to be going over the realistic expectations for this specific Green Bay Packers team. And this is a little bit more interesting. And obviously, some of this comes with the eye of the beholder. But I talked about this the other day. I struggle with this, or at least I've recently been struggling with this concept to some real extent. My expectation is not necessarily that they win a Super Bowl this year. And they're like 4% Vegas odds of hoisting a championship at the end of the year. But that's certainly not my expectation going into the year. But can they be successful without winning a Super Bowl? I still think the answer is no. I think the only way for this team to ultimately be successful is by winning a championship. But that's a harsh, not expectation, but goal for any team is just championship or bust. There's probably a through line somewhere where if Jordan Love's amazing and all the young players progress and they make a real significant run and just fall slightly short, probably still a successful season in some way, right? Take player progression out of it. So take Jordan Love being amazing aside and young players, just put the players to the side from a pure team standpoint. For you, I'm genuinely curious, put it in the comments. Can the Packers have a successful season without winning a Super Bowl? I still lean no, but I think there's probably different ways to look at it, different viewpoints. I guess here's the opposite of it. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a failure of a season if they don't win a Super Bowl, but I don't think it can be a true successful season if they don't win a Super Bowl. But that is something different, I guess, in totality. Those are what, you would define as a successful season. What I want to go over today are realistic expectations. What are real, true expectations for this team? And whether you agree with my expectations or not. Maybe you have loftier expectations. Maybe you have fewer expectations. Whatever that is, I highly recommend either jotting them down or putting them firmly in your memory banks, because I think the only way that we can fairly judge players, personnel, coaching staff, front office, etc., is by understanding what our expectations were for this team going into the year. And then if they met expectations, even if they didn't win a Super Bowl, unless your expectations are that they win a Super Bowl, if they met expectations, all right, well then, we probably don't need to talk about everyone should get fired, right? Or if they, exceeded expectations again, but maybe didn't win a Super Bowl, all right, well then again, they're trending in the right direction. They were above and beyond what you expected. And likewise, or the reverse, if you will, if they didn't meet your expectations, well, then we do have something to look at. we do have to kind of come to grips with why that happened, who was at fault, and why those expectations were not met. So all that aside, I have, same as the other 2 days, the last 2 days that we went over, I have 12 what I believe are fair and realistic expectations for this Packers team in 2025. And I guess this season in totality, 25, 26. I will point out, caveat it, whatever you want. We don't need to spend time on it. Injuries, of course, can nuke all of this, right? Our expectations are this, and then 5 players get hurt right away, and it nukes your season. And all right, things change if that's the case. Outside of crazy injuries, which fingers crossed, lucky rabbit's foot, pray to whoever you need to pray to, whatever you need. Hopefully, that is not the case of what's going to happen this upcoming season. But that aside, here are what I believe are realistic and fair expectations for this year. Number one, make the playoffs and win at least one playoff game. I'll say one more time. I'm not saying that if they, win 2 playoff games but lose the Super Bowl, I'm not necessarily saying that that is a successful season, but I am saying the expectation for this team should be at minimum 1 playoff win. I need to see some signs of growth. And even this, right? Just 1 playoff win. If they lose the next round, you're back to where they were sort of in 2023, right? You have not made significant progress from that time. You made the playoffs. That's great. You won a playoff game your first time, then lost to the 49ers. You didn't win a playoff game in 2024, and then you won one, but lost one in 2025. You sort of have still stagnated to some extent. But bare minimum here is this team should get in the playoffs and should win at least 1 playoff game. That is my personal expectation for the outcome of this season. Hoping for much better. Definitely hoping that it's not anything worse, but I think that is the bare expectation for this upcoming season. Number 2 has to have some sort of improved wide receiver play with fewer wide receiver error. We talked again to Warren Sharp earlier this week. He did a great job of detailing all of the terrible wide receiver error that took place in 2024. You spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver. You spent a third-round pick on a wide receiver. There's going to be a ton of competition in that room. You signed McCole Hardman. That cannot happen again. Not even close to it. It needs to be a good 2 or 3 steps better than where it was. And at worst, hopefully what we saw again in 2023. And if there isn't a step forward with all of that talent and all of those incredible young pieces at wide receiver, and again, spending some serious draft capital this past year, then we need to look at why. And I'm not necessarily saying it's Mahaffey's fault as the wide receivers coach or anything like that. I'm not necessarily saying it's not either, but there needs to be real signs of progress within that wide receiver room. That's expectation number 2. Expectation number 3. This should be, and in my opinion, needs to be at least a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense, and a top 16 special teams. Notice, I think top 10 offense, top 10 defense are fair goals for this team to meet this upcoming season. For special teams, notice I'm not saying top 5. I'm not saying top 10. I'm not even saying top 12 or 15, just in the front half of the league. Even if it's at that number 16 spot, right kind of dab in the middle of the NFL pantheon of special teams units. I don't care. But there is enough talent on this team and in the special teams room that this should not be some abysmal special teams unit. And it's time for Rich Bisaccia, as a special teams coordinator, to step up and coordinate a top 16 special teams. And it's even that in and of itself is fairly remarkable, right? Because we're talking about how constantly we need to have a top 10 offense, top 10 defense. And we just sort of, I don't know, either don't care or lose track of special. This should be a team that is capable of putting together a good special teams unit. So 16 seems more than fair. So I want to see these offensive, defensive, and special teams rankings be top 10 for offense, top 10 for defense, and top half of the league in special teams. And anything less than that, again, barring injury, will be a disappointment. This should be an offense with the weapons that they have, and Jordan Love, an improved offensive lineman, that's easily capable of being a top 10 offense. We saw this defense this past year be a top 10 defense by pretty much every account, and they haven't lost anything. They didn't gain a ton, but they haven't lost anything. The defense that should continue to grow in year 2 with Jeff Hafley. I do not want to see a step back there. We talked about special teams, needs to be in the front half of the league. That's number 3. Top 10 offense, top 10 defense, top 16 special teams. Number 4, we've talked about it these past few days or past couple days, but this needs to be a team of young players that show legitimate signs of progress. I'm not expecting everyone to take a step forward. In fact, I'm expecting, per usual, a couple of these players probably take some step back. That's not the end of the world. That's going to happen to all 32 teams with a couple of their players this year. Not concerned about that. But last year, we saw a team that had multiple players that either stagnated, hit a brick wall, or took a significant step backwards, or just any step backwards. It didn't look like a quote unquote draft and develop team. It looked like a draft and, oh, that's who they are team. In fact, again, some of those players who looked really good in 2023 looked a solid step worse in 2024. I mentioned it on yesterday's episode. If that happens again, there's real problems on this team. If we see a second consecutive year of regression, I am concerned. I am legitimately concerned. Not only can that not happen, it can't be where all of these players and how we saw them perform this past year in 2024 is exactly what we see in 2025. You are supposed to be a team and an organization that develops talent, that puts a bunch of time, effort, and energy into letting these young players compete and grow and get better. And we're going to develop them in-house and we're going to see these signs of progress. All right, then it's time. And we need to see that sign of growth. And I think it goes back to Brian Gutekunst's call for urgency. He knows this cannot be a group of players that is just okay with getting to the playoffs or kind of being what they are already. It's time to take that next step as a young, up-and-coming team that has the ability to compete for a championship. You can be young, you can be talented, but if you're not progressing, then you are watching as all 31 of the other teams take steps ahead of you. Because there are going to be teams that are consistently growing and getting better and pushing the envelope. And if you don't do that, you're just stuck in neutral or in worse, reverse. We talked about it with the OKC Thunder, right? They were a young, up-and-coming team that took the necessary steps to become a competitive team. And I'm not talking about adding Hartenstein or Caruso or anything like that. Those are solid additions to the team. But it was Chet Holmgren, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, J-Dub or J-Will, I forget which one is which, but that young group of players that really took the next step to be a championship contender. That's what the Packers need to do. It's up to the young players and the coaches to get the most out of those young players if we really want to see not only those signs of growth, but a team that's ready to compete moving forward. Number 5, there has to be improved play from this defensive front 7. And I'll say one more time, that's my expectation. We know that last year, LVN and Kenny Clark had injuries. All right, fair enough. Then let's see it without injuries, hopefully, in 2025, and let's see them play to the level that we expect them to play at. You did add some new additions, whether it be Colin Oliver, Baron Sorrell, Warren Brinson. There are some new pieces in that defensive front. You have 4 players that I would say in Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Quay Walker, that are in that range of like, hey, it needs to be now. You need to show us now that you are capable of playing at a high level, or it's probably just not going to happen. And then, of course, you have this really fun, what we're hoping is a superstar in the making in Edgerrin Cooper, that what we can't have happen here is what happened to all of those sophomores in 2024, where you're expecting them to take that big step forward, and instead it just doesn't happen or goes in reverse. And I do have some fear with Anthony Campanelli of like, he's gone. Is this going to be something where these linebackers with him gone are maybe just not not quite there, not quite as good as we expect. I don't think that's going to be the case, but there is a little bit of fear there. So I need to see improved play from this front seven. With TJ Slayton gone, everyone's going to have to step up a little bit better in run defense. And, they're going to have to keep that consistency and that urgency on run defense. And they're going to have to get better as a pass rush unit. We talked about it on both days, really. If the pass rush is non-existent, you're dead on arrival when it comes to the playoffs. So that front seven, and I'll call out the big ones, right? Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, LVN, Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, those five in particular have to be a real, legitimate, fearsome group up front if this team wants to be a contender. And if nothing else, like I'm saying here, it just needs to be improved. I need to see steps. I need to see growth. You brought in a new defensive line coach. We should expect better this year, and it needs to be better this year. Number 6 is there should be some bounce back seasons. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Luke Musgrave, Kenny Clark, LVN, Carl Brooks, amongst others. Many players, especially that sophomore class this past year, the class of 2023, just it didn't go according to plan. I need to see those players get back to where, at minimum, where they were in 2023, if not better than that. You can't have players show what they're capable of and then not live up to the standard that they set for themselves. The old cliche, the standard is the standard. And a lot of those players did not live up to it this past year. So I want to see those players bounce back, play better, get their feet under them, play with confidence, and show that 2024 was the fluke and not their better years and years prior were the actual fluke. We'll find out this year. Number 7, we talked about this with Warren Sharp, but a more aggressive Matt LaFleur. I can't watch a bunch of fourth down opportunities where you should be going for it, just thrown to the wayside and Daniel Whalen's coming on to punt at your own 40-yard line or whatever. Just can't happen. Red zone decisions need to be more aggressive. Fourth down decisions need to be more aggressive. All of it just needs to be a different level of decision-making that we've seen him do. We've seen him be ultra aggressive in past seasons, make the right analytical decisions. He's got a whole analytical team at his disposal. Utilize it. And I'm not saying you have to listen to it every single time. If you're just going with every, mathematical decision every single time, well, then you might as well just let AI run the team at that point. Hopefully you have a good AI, but you might as well just let the algorithms do it, right? To me, that you have to have some common sense and some intuition and instinct in some decisions with where the game is trending, how it's going, etc. But on the whole, in totality, you should be in the high 80%, if not low 90%, on trusting the analytical models of what you should be doing when it comes to making big decisions in football games. Not always. There's going to be exceptions, but for the most part, you need to be leaning on that side. In past years, we've seen Matt lean on that side. This past year in 2024, it was not that. It needs to be that way in 2025. Next up is we need to see the cohesion between the running game and the play action game and the passing game more specifically. The previous iterations of Matt LaFleur's offense and what I kind of call like the Aaron Jones rushing attack, right, was a offense that ran the ball well and utilized play action off of it and used some play action look-alike plays to be able to run the football. Like they worked off of each other. The run plays looked like pass plays. The pass plays looked like run plays. One play would lead to another play later in either the series or the game, whether it's, Matt's old illusion of complexity or whether it's just, kind of stacking plays on top of each other. We need to see more of that. This past year, I think for a variety of different reasons, the play action game just didn't feel like it really meshed as well with what I, again, kind of call the Josh Jacobs offense. Now, I think there are a variety of different reasons for this. I think, first of all, I think they were kind of not learning on the fly, but I do think there were developments, enhancements, and changes to the rushing game as they found out more and more what Josh Jacobs was successful with, what he liked to run, and how to make him not only a focal point within the offense, but make his rushing attack really effective, which they were successful in doing, wildly successful in doing that. But I do think their play action off of it sort of suffered a little bit. I think the second thing at play here was that Jordan Love's injury caused two different things. Number one, when he came back from injury, you could tell they didn't want to necessarily put him on some of those bootlegs or just, allow some opportunities for him to get hit more. One of the things that you guys may not have caught on to as much this past year is, and we saw Bretton Cox have one this past year. We saw it happen on a couple different occasions, but in the past, you know, when a quarterback went on a bootleg, the defensive end would either go down and play the run first, and maybe they would have kind of somebody, taking the backside or whatever. Now what's happening is on these stretch plays that could potentially be play action or could potentially be a bootleg, they're sending a defensive end right at the quarterback. And if the quarterback keeps that ball and doesn't give it to the running back, he's obliterated. And like I said, we saw Bretton Cox do that this past year. And Matt even said, there was a press conference where he said basically like he did not want to have Jordan be taking some of those hits. So I think the injuries and just again the unwillingness to maybe have your quarterback take some of those huge shots played a factor in how they kind of went with the going away from some of the play action and bootleg looks that have been very successful in the offense in the past. The other thing that the Jordan Love injury did was it created that Malik Willis style offense, which created the whole spinner series where it was massively effective and Josh Jacobs did a great job running the ball with it. And that's a really tough thing to kind of have as many play action concepts or bootlegs off of it. So you were creating this new offense at times in real time, this offense that became very successful, but again, it didn't feel like you had the cohesiveness of previous seasons. It didn't mesh together quite as well. So I want to see that get back. I think it will. Matt's smart enough. He can figure all that stuff out and how to, again, stack plays on top of each other. But without that, the offense just is lacking a little bit of that connectivity. And I want to see a little bit of that connectivity come back this year. All right, number 9, at some point during this year, this is going to sound an awful lot like needing a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think they specifically need oh my God, we're going to throw this guy the ball 100 plus times. He's going to catch 80 balls for 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns. If Matthew Golden or Dontavian Wicks or Jaden Reed or any of these guys want to be that, that's awesome. I will gladly take an 80 catch, 1,600, 10, 12 touchdown receiver. That'd be great. I don't think they specifically need that. I think they have a lot of mouths to feed. I think they can spread the ball around. I think they can call the play that's at hand, execute it, regardless of who is getting the ball in that situation. I think Jordan can go through his progressions. And when he finds the open receiver, whoever that might be, find that specific open wide receiver. But what I do think they need is a go-to player on offense in key positions and in key situations. Red zone, third down, fourth down, gotta have it moments. It's tough for that to be a running back. And we know Josh Jacobs is their bell cow, their kind of go-to on offense right now. But in a 3rd and 8, that makes it a little bit tougher, right? In a red zone from the 10-yard line, it makes it a little bit tougher. So whether it be Tucker Kraft or Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Watson when he's back, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, McCall, I don't care who it is. But at some point, you're going to have to develop that player where it's players over plays. And we're like, all right, let's say it's Romeo Doubs. We got to get the ball to Romeo because we know he's going to get open and be the go-to player on this play. And somebody needs to step up and say, hey, when we have to have it, I'm your guy. I don't care who it is. Really legitimately don't. I prefer it is somebody that has more time left on the team, right? Somebody like Savion Williams or Matthew Golden, because they're going to be around a while. If it's Dobbs or Watson, then you're like, oh, now we got to re-sign that guy, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But I want to see somebody really take that and say, hey, key situation, you're throwing my way. I'm going to get open, feed me, and I'll take care of business. Somebody's got to step into that role. Number 10, I think some of you are really going to like this one. Brian Gutekunst, as we've talked about a million times in the last 3 days, called out urgency. I agree with them. I agree it's time to start winning championships again. I agree that this team is ready. I agree that this team needs to have that focus, dedication, and common goal of once again being the best team that they can possibly be and going out and winning a Super Bowl. I'm all for all of that. At some point, though, you are going to get to the point where you need to make some harsh decisions with that idea of urgency in mind. What I mean by that is you're competing this year. You're going out and trying to win a Super Bowl. Brian Gutekunst said it himself. It's time to start winning championships. I'm all for that. But if that's going to be the case, Brian Gutekunst needs to put his money where his mouth is at times and say, hey, some of these things didn't work out. Maybe that's LVN at defensive end, and LVN just doesn't work out. If that's the case, you need to have a harsh and swift action of say, not cutting LVN, but this team needs to say, all right, that wasn't the answer. We need to go in a different direction. Maybe it's a wide receiver that doesn't work out. Maybe it's a Luke Musgrave. Maybe I don't care who it is. And hopefully it's nobody, but you can't just let this thing continue to play out. And I want to give players opportunities, and I want them to give, have opportunities if they make mistakes to make up for it and be better from it. But at some point in time, when you want to be competitive and play for Super Bowls, if your guys just aren't stepping up and developing, I don't care if you spent the top 15 round or top 15 pick overall in the first round on LVN. If he can't play to the level that you need him to play at, then it's Brenton Cox time, or it's Barron Sorrell time, or it's Colin Oliver. I don't care who it is, but you're going to have to make some adjustments to that. I like Green Bay's loyalty. I like that they want to give these players opportunity to grow and succeed. I think those are positive attributes, but then he can't be like, if it's LVN, you can't have him be a starter. You can't have him playing, 40, 50 snaps per game. So if you're urgent, if you want to go out and win right now, then you're going to have to make some of those harsh decisions as the season goes along if players are not playing to the level that they're capable of playing at. Number 11, I need to see proof of concept. I need to see, even if this team doesn't win a Super Bowl, that I can look at it and say, man, I saw what they're capable of. That could be a 7-game winning streak towards the end of the year against some really good football teams. That could be 2 dominant performances against the Lions and the Commanders to open the year. That could be a 3-game playoff run, and then they maybe just fall short in the Super Bowl. It could be a variety of different things. But I can't look at 2024 and say, look at that. I see a Super Bowl team lurking, because when they played the good teams, they lost. It's hard to look at anything of their results this past year and be like, look at, they were right there. They were just, no, they really weren't. They lost their last 3 in the season. They played 6 good teams, or 3 good teams in 6 games, and they went 0-6. Again, I would love to see this team win a Super Bowl. If, at least I should say, my expectation here is even if they don't win a Super Bowl, we see at some point this year a real legitimate team, or have a real legitimate feeling of that team that they can actually go out and win it. Like, we saw something tangible, evidenced of like, okay, no, they didn't win it this year, but go back to that 4-game stretch, 5-game stretch, 6-game, 10-game, whatever it might be, and go watch and be like, I see it. I see a Super Bowl team there. So I need to see some proof of concept this year. And last but not least is a top 10 season from Jordan Love and full clarity on who he is as a quarterback. I feel like we were robbed a little bit of that in 2024 with all the injury stuff. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And if he does stay healthy, I think we're not only going to get a definition of what Jordan Love is, but I do believe he will easily be a top 10 quarterback in the league. And if it's above that, even better. But I need to see that he's the top 10 guy. And I need to see that, Green Bay has clarity of like, all right, we can not only win with this guy, we can win because of this guy as well. So my expectations for 2025, playoffs with at least 1 playoff win, improved wide receiver play with less wide receiver error, a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and top 16 special teams, real legitimate signs of progression from their young players, improved play from their front 7, bounce back seasons from the players who did not play as well in 2024, a more aggressive Matt LaFleur, cohesiveness between the run game and the play action game and the passing attack, a go-to player on offense, somebody steps up into that role, harsh decisions when needed, and a real desire for that urgency, not just speak, actually show the actions, proof of concept, Let me see what this team actually looks like and that they have a real legitimate chance, even if they don't win it this year, and a top 10 season from Jordan Love. Those are my real and I think fair expectations for this upcoming year. What do you think? Am I over aggressive? Am I not aggressive enough? Did these feel about right? Would love to know what you think. What are your expectations for this upcoming season? These have been mine. Appreciate you joining me today. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Ritaka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gessford, Dylan Patscott, SoCal Pack, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Carlo Delgado, Willie Winkle, Stinkle, Jen Wright, The Gable Storm, Pack Attack Cast, Chris Weish, and Griff Henblee. I'll see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.